Feel free to check out my TeePublic after the video, and support me on Patreon. Watch till the end of the video for more. Special thanks to Patreon supporter, editor, and Toku Titancast co-host Cole, aka Godzillagamer77, for commissioning this video. By the way, I'm getting close to firing you because of this. Last year, I talked about the 1997 anime adaptation of Kentaro Miura's magnum opus, Berserk, as well as a little bit about the legacy it brought upon, especially after Miura's unfortunate passing. There's no doubt that Berserk is easily one of the most influential stories ever told, in not just fiction, but the entire media industry as a whole, as the story, while very dark and depressing, was also very reassuring and uplifting, as even in our darkest times and the lowest of our lows, there is always a reason to keep living no matter how much pain we suffer, and the protagonist Guts is such an incredible example of this, which makes him such a compelling character and why so many readers resonate with him. But enough about that shit, let's talk about one of the worst adaptations of anything ever. Throughout the early 2010s came the Berserk Golden Age movie trilogy, a collection of animated films that adapted the manga's most famous storyline, the Golden Age, and went up to its conclusion in the Eclipse. While they were more of a Golden Age greatest hits compilation, they seemed to be a pretty worthwhile adaptation of that arc with some neat animation, while also covering some good ground with the story. I would recommend them, but honestly, you're better off watching the 1997 anime, which is kind of the same thing, but things are a bit more fleshed out, and admittedly, I'm a sucker for retro animation. It just feels more raw, you know? However, it wasn't until December 2015 when it was announced that Berserk was getting a new anime. We even got a little teaser and, oh, alright, doesn't really look finished, so here's hoping they touch up on it for when it's done. They do fix it, right? Anyway, this Berserk anime was to be done by Gemba Incorporated, a subsidiary of Digital Frontier that specializes in 3D animation, and from what I could gather, this show was their first production. Along with them was Leiden Films, known for their work on Terraformers, and Millipensi, another company that does 3D animation. The show would be directed by Shin Itagaki, who at this point had zero experience working with 3D animation. Makoto Fukami of Psycho Pass fame would be doing the writing. Shiro Sagisu and Susumu Hirasawa would return to compose music after the movie trilogy and the 97 anime respectively. Producer Reo Kurosu stated this will be a 2D-3D hybrid, and lastly, series creator Kentaro Miura himself was to be an executive supervisor. So at this point, we have a very experimental project that seeks to adapt Berserk past the Eclipse and has the blessing of the original creator. What could possibly go wrong? Short answer, everything went wrong. Long answer, for starters, the production team had until their deadline air date of July 1st, 2016, and because you had a decent number of people who had no experience with 3D animation, as the technology was still kinda relatively new, half of the production was spent on trying to figure out how to get the damn technology to work. Now, if I were in this situation, if I got to that point, I would have just said, hey, we're still trying to work things out, give us another year, try and do our best we can, and we wanna deliver. Guess what? That didn't happen, so the production team only had mere months to try and get the first season animated. Like, even for a collaborative effort, 12 episodes in a span of 3 months is really not an easy thing to pull off. So you know these guys were just rushing the hell out of it. I mean, that July deadline was just breathing down their necks at that point. But guess what? Because the tech they were working with was still kinda new and a little too advanced and ambitious, their softwares would constantly crash, and what they were working with was just too much. And already you have a recipe for disaster, and what came of the highly anticipated Berserk 2016 with that in mind? Unfortunately, it's exactly what you'd expect. Now, just to get this out of the way, I'm not exactly the biggest Berserk fan out there. Like, I know parts of the manga, but I never actually sat down and read it.
What's wrong with you?
So going into this show, most of my experience came from the video game for the PlayStation 4. This will be relevant later, I promise. Right off the bat, we're treated with some of the ugliest 3D model work you'll ever see, like some actual Mikaku City actor shit. Don't ask how I know what that is. I remember watching this with Cole and I shuddered at the mere thought of the entire show being like this, and I was correct. Like, I thought I was just gonna have a fun time watching a bad anime with a good friend, but all we got was something a lot worse. Anyway, awful animation aside, like, I get it, new technology, 3D anime wasn't exactly a thing, it was kind of in its infancy, but it can at least be saved with some decent camera work, right? Turns out, you can't! Why? Because for some fucking reason, nearly every shot in Berserk is constantly moving in a way that feels like I'm getting thrown across the room. You know shaky cam in movies? Imagine the camera was tied to a rope and was given to an Olympic hammer thrower. It's like every time there is an action scene, the camera just feels the need to just spectate and sweep around from as many angles as possible in a singular motion. There are hardly any cuts at all in these scenes. Like, what the hell? Can I just enjoy the action in the way it's meant to be enjoyed? Or are you trying to hide the fact that it's all just shit? Gotta move the camera all over the fucking place so I can't tell how fucking horrible these action scenes are. Smart move. Even when there's a scene where it's just people talking, the camera is always moving. Like there's these weird pans and zooms, a shot of guts that's upside down for some fucking reason. Like visually, this is just not a good show to look at. Surely the writing is able to compensate for at least something. Well, guess again, fucker! More will be talked about as this video goes on, but I just want to go back to my limited Berserk knowledge. Even with the knowledge I had, I knew what happened in the story and how it all came together. I understood the motivations and nuances of each character, but let me tell you, even knowing all that, I couldn't understand what the fuck was going on. Like, I had an idea of what was supposed to be going on, but I couldn't for the life of me grasp what the hell this show was about. Like, the direction is just so shit that the story just ends up being a very confusing mess. Imagine watching this for the first time as a newbie to Berserk. You're getting thrown in for a loop, because while we do see a little bit of the Black Swordsman arc, the Golden Age is entirely omitted and the Eclipse is only vaguely referenced. So you're just shit out of luck because you have absolutely nothing to go by at that point, because the show just doesn't fucking care to clue you in. But if you do have some familiarity, like my buddy Cole, you're going to find that every piece of nuance and emotion is just skimmed over and everything is just rushed to hell to the point of being completely unsatisfactory. It's also worth noting that this show is actually supposed to be a follow-up to the Golden Age trilogy of films, as opposed to the 1997 anime. But you wouldn't know that unless you actually did some fucking research. So who the hell was this show trying to cater towards? Surely not the uninformed general audience, but for fans of the source material? If that's the case, then there was just no passion at all behind this project. Oh yeah, it's because they couldn't figure out how to do the fucking animation for most of it! Anyway, in case you think this show can't get any worse than what I'm already making it out to be, I'm gonna pass on this next part to Godzillagamer77. So take it away, Cole.
Yeah, move over, Titan Boy, it's my turn. Berserk 2016 is one of the worst anime adaptations I've ever seen. It's embarrassing how far they missed the mark. And with, Berserk, one of the most visually stunning manga to ever come out, and just to get this? Okay, I know everyone and their grandma have talked about how bad the animation in this show is, but still, look at it! Look at this shit! How is this good? What was wrong with the 90s anime? Hell, the movies got it right, mostly. But what, is having a solely 2D Berserk adaptation too much to ask for? Look, if you want to make an anime that has 3D in it, that's fine. Trigger and Mappa can do it really well, but here... No, the whole show is just a visual nightmare. Any shot with the 3D models just looks like garbage. The models barely even look like the characters half of the time. Some look okay, like Puck and Griffith, but the rest? Why does Skull Knight look like he's entirely made of metal? Isn't he made of bone? What is he, a robot? Not to mention that the fog, Jesus Christ, can you not even animate fog correctly? Oh my god, why does Zai look like a Webkins? He's supposed to be one of the most intimidating villains in the whole series, but here he's less scary than Barney. Oh my god, what did they do to the Berserker armor? It's one of the most badass moments in the manga and it looks like garbage. And Guts is somehow the worst one of the bunch. He barely looks like him, and that's a major problem when he's the fucking main character. The only times Guts ever looks good is when he's drawn in 2D. Hell, the only good shots in the entire show are the occasional 2D drawings from time to time. While not amazing, it's much better than any of the 3D shots of the characters. Heck, both openings are in 2D and look good, so why couldn't the rest of the show look like this? Then again, it's not like the 2D stuff is anything outstanding. It's for the most part, it's mostly used for stills in the first half of the show. In the second half, it is used a lot more prevalent, and some parts actually look pretty decent, but that's like, what, 30% of the whole show, while the rest looks like that? While the whole show visually looks like doo-doo and it makes my eyes bleed, the audio is just trash! The sound mixing is terrible across the board. Half the time the music never matches with the scene. Like, for example, they play heavy metal over Griffith's rebirth. What? And if I have to hear hi-ho one more time, I'm gonna strangle someone. It plays nearly every episode and sometimes more than once. If Guts does something as much as blink, it plays. It's even used for the previews, so you better get used to it. Speaking of the previews, they are hilariously bad. I just used quotes from the next episode and half of it doesn't even make sense. One of the quotes is just bleh. I could do one, just watch me. Okay, whoever was in charge of making the clang for the Dragon Slayer needs to be fired on sight, because what? That's the best you had? It sounds like if a monkey started smashing pans together, then threw those pans into a pile of dishes. You could put any other sound effect over it and it would sound much better. And I'm gonna try it. And not only is the sound atrocious, but it clangs even if it isn't metal. Those are just people! Why does it clang? It clangs when it stabs the ground! That's not how it works! Even with the clang, the other sound effects are just as bad. Any cannon is reverbed to absolute shit to the point where it doesn't even sound like a cannon. It sounds like dubstep. But do you know what the absolute worst sin this anime makes is? Worse than the bad animation and worse than the sound effects. Yeah, they couldn't even get the story right! The first episode is one of the most confusing starting points I've ever seen. So the first few minutes of the first episode cover Chapter 95, which is the start of Lost Children. Okay, fair enough. But then the anime decides to go all the way back to Chapter 1. Why? What purpose do you need to adapt this part of the story? They only cover the bar scene, so that's like, what, 20% of the whole chapter? You know, people complain about the first episode of the 90s anime is out of place because it only covers the first chapter of Black Swordsman, but then covers the rest of Golden Age. But at least there, the episode covered more than one scene. It also helped establish the tone, and the rest of the 90s anime was to show how Guts got to this place. But in this anime? Yeah, sure, let's shove Isidro in there for no reason. His normal introduction is fine. Hell, they even show that one too, so basically they introduced him twice for no reason. Then the episode covers Chapter 2 and then cuts all the way to Chapter 96 with the tree from Lost Children, just without Jill and many other changes. Just to then skip all of Lost Children and then cover Conviction instead. Why? For what purpose does skipping Lost Children benefit the story? Lost Children is important and amazing, so skipping it is entirely just ass. Just to skip to Chapter 119 with no context for why Guts gets captured in the first place. In the manga, Guts just fought an apostle and she messed him up, so in the manga it makes sense why he would get captured. He couldn't even swing his sword without opening his wounds. But here they try to make it seem like the tree's the reason he's weak, which makes absolutely no sense. And that's just the first episode. For the most part, the rest of the anime is a pretty straightforward adaptation. With that being said, sometimes they take it too literally, like in Farnese's flashback. The manga uses a lot of black backgrounds, and the anime just uses the black backgrounds too, which looks really lazy and awkward. But what is with the damn mansion? This shit is entirely pointless and adds nothing to the narrative. Instead of taking place in a valley in the manga, the anime thought it'd be a good idea to put Guts in Scooby-Doo. But then one of the most pivotal moments of the manga and the arc is when Guts goes to see Goto in the cabin, and Goto reprimanding him for leaving everyone behind for petty revenge. This moment in the manga is so powerful, but in the anime, it falls completely flat. We barely spend any time with Guts at this point, so we have no context for anything. Which also goes into who is this show actually for? If you went into this show without reading the manga, you would be so confused. The opening shows clips from the Golden Age arc, but they never recap anything, so newbies would be completely lost. Even if you did read the manga, the show is so shit they wouldn't want to watch it anyway, so this show appeals to absolutely nobody. Also, during this scene, it really shows how shit the 3D models are, as Guts barely emotes the entire time. Miura has this very meticulous way of drawing Guts, and Guts is so quite expressive in the manga, but here he looks so bored. Like, come on, man, react to something. This cripples every emotional beat in the show and affects every character. Heck, the show speeds through the emotional moments just to get to the next shitty action sequence all the time. The entire scene with Godo is so rushed, and many other scenes feel like this. For example, when Guts and the crew get to the beach, Miura dedicates an entire panel to Guts putting on Shirake's hat. It's a really sweet moment, and it shows Guts' growing bond with Shirake, but it's like the staff for the anime just translated as Guts puts a hat on someone. No, that's not it, and it happens with every emotional scene. Any character development is shafted just so the next action sequence can start, and no, that's not Berserk. And look, I can go on and on about how terrible the anime is, such as how they introduced the Wenham section of the story just for it to be completely dropped and never mentioned again. The fucking camera that doesn't stop moving around. Jesus Christ, you're gonna give me motion sickness. Stop moving! The main villain of the Millennium Falcon Empire being axed entirely. The awful mixing of 2D and 3D in the same frame looking god awful, and the terrible filter they put over the models. Seriously, what is this shit? But the big point I want to hit on is that this series misses what makes Berserk so special. The quiet moments. While the anime gets so caught up in getting into the action, they completely forget why people love this story so much. As pretentious as this sounds, Berserk isn't a series just about fighting and killing demons. It's about people and how to overcome struggles. The reason why so many people love Guts is that despite everything Guts goes through, and he goes through a lot, he never stops moving forward. And there's something powerful about that. The scene where Guts stops and realizes he's found a new family is just beautiful. But there's so many other great moments, such as Guts lying, looking at the stars, the bonfire of dreams where Guts opens up and realizes he didn't know what his purpose is, and this shit honestly made me cry. Guts' first kiss with Casca, which leads into one of the greatest sex scenes I think I've ever seen in manga. The heart-to-heart Guts gives Jill at the end of Lost Children. Guts finally reuniting with Casca and hugging her. Shirake's final goodbye with her mistress, Guts thanking Serpico for helping him get to Elfheim, how do you say this? And many others I haven't mentioned. Those moments are what make Berserk, Berserk. It's a beautiful story, and it's something I highly recommend people check out, as long as you can stomach some of the not safe for work material, as Berserk can get pretty messed up. But all in all, read the Berserk manga, don't watch this anime. This anime sucks dick juice and I hate it. It was a waste of time, and stay away from it at all costs. Just watch the 90s anime or the movies and you'll be much better off. Better than this shit, 1 out of 10. Davis, give me my money, you fuck!
If you were to look up the definition of the phrase dead on arrival, you wouldn't find Berserk 2016, but it's a good example. When you put it all together, what you have is a series that was troubled from the very start, learned nothing as it went on, took the magnificent art of a beloved creator and watered it down to where it was nearly unrecognizable and removed every bit of emotion and nuance that made the story so compelling to begin with. It's pretty safe to say that Berserk 2016 is easily one of the most disastrous anime to exist, and is certainly one of the worst anime shows ever made. Now, what does the future hold for Berserk in animation? Well, no one really knows. But what we do know is how to not adapt Berserk in animation. It's probably the one thing this show has to contribute to the grand scheme of things. And by the way, did I mention that this video was a commission? Well, you can commission videos from me on my Patreon, but if you don't have the dough for that, you can always sub to it for access to my Discord server, early access to videos, and exclusive content. So if you like what you see, consider supporting the channel on Patreon. And once I reach enough patrons, I'll do a video covering several unmade Godzilla films, so if that's something you like to see, then go support me on Patreon. Feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and this is TitanGoji, signing off. And then Cole starts talking like a stinky poo-poo head who doesn't like Get a Robo and also reads Rent a Girlfriend. You didn't hear any of this, Cole. Just cut this out. None of it really matters. I'm just scrolling down to the next part. Okay.